Philip, you had this concept, I was really interested about a relationship between mentors and students. And my topic, why I asked previously, what you reminded about aggression. So my question is that society as a whole, I think, lives through their lives with stigma from education. So education is not organic process what opens our integrity, authenticity, or kind of gives this feeling of there are your wings and let's fly to your dreams and fulfill your potential. There is a lot of traumas. I don't know how many traumas we have, 1,000, 10,000 traumas, but we have in this K-12 process from first grade to 12th grade and then university. So how this relationship between teacher and student, how it plays into this? I don't know. I gave you just this one context from what I'm coming from. What you make of it?
But that's an interesting question with a lot of things to approach. But mostly I can also relate to what you've been saying. I don't know, for most people that I know, and also for me, going through the classic educational system in Austria was a really tough time. And also because obviously you're a young adult, you're in the process of puberty in a way, which is always hard. You're trying to find yourself, you're trying to identify yourself, you're trying to find out who you are. And while you're doing that, you're still kind of embedded in this educational system, which in most cases is strictly hierarchic. Now, when it comes to the importance of mentor and teacher, I think this is the key thing we need to look at when we understand or when we try to talk about education and learning. But I think one of the biggest problems here is that in general, we associate education with something that is happening in the classroom. It applies to learning. Learning is often associated, and you have a lot of approaches. There's the type who listens really well, the type who needs to write everything down. But we should deconstruct learning for a second here and go back to the stage of actually our birth, because learning is something that starts from the moment you are born. Learning is always something that is connected with your psyche and the human psyche as well. And we as human beings develop from the early start on. And there's a word I would like to introduce now that I think is really important in the concept of teaching, which is called identification. Now, identification is a really broad theme and a broad word. It's like, for example, in psychoanalytic theory, if I would talk about perversion now, there would be 100 different approaches to talk about identification. What I mean in the sense of identification is I see myself in you. I see something in you. I find something in you that I can relate myself with. And this is really important in the connection of learning. And I would like to give the example here of Anton Zeilinger. I also mentioned him in Portugal when we talked the first time. He was a physicist and also a candidate for the Nobel Prize. And he said the funny thing about university is if the people who are studying physics, they're not there because they love physics so much, but because they had a good teacher in school. And if you look back at your own experience in the educational system, you know, we all go there from classroom to classroom, from hours to hours. Sometimes we are bored. Sometimes we don't know why we're learning about that. But when does a class usually like what is being educated? It's when the teacher is in a certain way graspable, if he is charismatic, if he engages them, if they in a certain way can identify with him. Or identification does not necessarily mean that it is that there needs a certain person. Let's give me another example here for imagine a person who hates history, a young adult who just doesn't like, why do I have to learn about old kings and old politics? It's just boring. And then imagine he's sitting with his girlfriend at home and he's watching Netflix, for example, and he sees Narcos. And in Narcos, it's a series about Pablo Escobar and the drug cartels in Colombia. So he suddenly realizes, well, those people really existed. And he's kind of touched by the series, by the drama. And suddenly you find the person who is completely disinterested in history, looking the whole time up on Wikipedia, looking up, who's that person? Do you know he did that and that? It really existed. Also here, a process of identification in a way happened, an emotional connection to the topic, then in a certain way triggers my desire to learn and understand more. And I think that this is a key thing in education in general, because we are usually facing the problem that we are teaching a lot of stuff, but there is really no room for the emotional connections to it. And also the relationship of mentor and student, there's something we can also go deeper into, is something that needs to be deconstructed as well, because it doesn't work on a hierarchical structure. You know, the classic picture of the teacher being the big boss and the student being the unknowing who has to learn from him.
Okay.